The two Conservative leadership hopefuls have unveiled their new plans to clamp down on crime and sexual harassment. Rishi Sunak pledged to make down-blousing illegal. That's where someone takes a photo down a woman's top without her consent. And Foreign Secretary Liz Truss is going to outlaw wolf whistling and catcalling if she becomes Prime Minister. It's part of a wider crackdown on misogyny in public places that they both hope will tackle violence against women and girls. So is this a long overdue change or an overreach of the state? And is it even enforceable? Well, to debate this even, I'm joined by the leader of the Children and Family Party, Mike Buchanan, and author and broadcaster Amy Nicole will be with us in just a moment, and the political commentator Dominique Samuels here with me in the studio. Mike, come on, do you reckon this ban on wolf whistling and catcalling, is this long overdue? Won't it be a nicer environment for women to not have to worry about being exposed to this sort of thing?
Darren, these are just the latest examples of politicians' pathetic pandering to miserable, whiny feminists. We know from a survey carried out by the Forces Society, a radical feminist charity, that only 1 in 11 women and 1 in 25 men are feminists, and yet the politicians continually pander to them. I mean, what next exactly? I mean, should we make what about up-sleeving? You know, taking photographs of women's arms. Perhaps we should have men wearing blinkers. A law saying men have to wear blinkers when they're out of doors in case their gaze falls upon some of these special snowflakes.
Do you agree with those sentiments?
That was funny. But I think in terms of Rishi Sunak's policy of down-blousing, that being taking photographs of a woman's boobs, essentially, without her consent, I do agree with that. I think it really is in stark contrast to Liz Truss's proposed policy, which I really don't see how the police are going to enforce this. And I think there are more pressing issues that the police should be focusing on rather than policing minute exchanges between men and women. Look, as a woman, I've been catcalled, I've been wolf whistled at. Am I going to then stand there and call the cops? No. Will they come? I mean, they don't even arrive for burglaries. Probably not. So it just seems to be a waste of police time when they could be spending more time focusing on women being actually raped and murdered rather than someone whistling at someone.
Mike, do you actually think that this is creating a climate of fear in which men are going to just ultimately become too afraid to even speak to a woman?
There is that risk, of course. But before this discussion, Darren, I spoke with Elizabeth Hobson, the young anti-feminist woman who was leader of this party for over a year. And in her email to me following that discussion, she wrote this. And this is with regard to down-blousing. Another day, another absurd feminist grievance. Women are important members of our society, and we should be encouraged to flourish. Please encourage us by understanding that we can cope with the day-to-day hurly-burly of being an individual in contact with other individuals all by ourselves. Please stop drilling these messages into us that we're victims who need the authorities to regulate our interactions. We grow when we're challenged to. Let us grow. Okay. We should not tie up the police and solicitors and courts with ridiculous cases about down-blousing and wolf whistling.
Amy Nicole, do you agree with those sentiments? Do you think actually the two Conservative leadership candidates are just way off the mark here? You create extra burdens for the police and these measures aren't necessary?
I think what your other guest has just said there is exactly the problem. We've completely normalised behaviour that is damaging and toxic and only ever happens to women. We're talking about horrible incidences that women have to take as part of their daily lived experience, and that's the problem. And once again, this whole debate has been completely trivialised. This isn't about a little wolf whistle here and there. This is about street harassment. This is about serial street harassment. And Liz Truss wasn't saying we're going to criminalise it and anyone who even looks at a woman gets handcuffs taken off and given the death penalty. This is about taking incidences and making a record, and then you can see repeat offenders and you can see patterns starting to emerge, because the serious harm that we all agree that we want dealt with is built upon these little incidences. The killer of Sarah Everard, Wayne Couzens, was known to be a indecent exposure and flasher. And this was never taken particularly seriously, and it was never recorded. If it had been recorded, we could have seen the pattern and we could have prevented perhaps what happened in the end. It's all about prevention, and this is tried and tested. So in 2016, Nottinghamshire Police did a pilot, at the time trivialised by the likes of yourselves, called was just banning wolf whistling. It actually was really, really effective, and reports went up by 25%, and women said that they felt really safe, and it's worked out incredibly well.
So, Mike, this is serious stuff. This sounds like Amy is raising some very powerful points there, that actually this is a good technique to catch perverts.
This is absolutely not serious stuff. Trying to link wolf whistling or down-blousing with rape or murder is absurd. This has to be one of the safest countries in the world for women and girls. Now, Sunak was quoted as saying this: "As a father of two girls, I want them to be able to go for a walk in the evening or to shop at night without any fear of threat." Well, I'm the father of two girls as well, who I love very dearly. But what Sunak says he wants will never happen. And it serves only to make women and girls more anxious.
Dominique, do you agree with that?
I think it's unfortunate. Can I just say one thing back to that? This is not a safe country for women and girls. A woman is killed by a man every 3 days in this country, so you're just wrong on that.
23 million. Out of 23 million, it is a very rare crime.
It is a rare crime. And in terms of safety on the streets, even being attacked by a stranger, men are actually more likely than women to experience that. This is a very safe place for women comparative to other nations with regards to rape and murder. That's just a fact. But in regards to Wayne Couzens, I think there's a big difference between exposing your genitalia randomly, and that absolutely should have been taken seriously, like, what the heck, compared to wolf whistling. I think those are two very different things, and I think he does raise a good point. It's sort of instilling this culture of fear within women that any sort of unwanted attention from men needs to automatically be criminalised. And what that is doing is that's micromanaging relationships between men and women. When it comes to, obviously, rape, murder, sexual harassment, they should obviously be taken seriously, but you run the risk of we're policing people's speech even more now, and then policing interaction. You're creating a culture of fear and anxiousness in a country that's supposed to be free.
Amy, are you not just perpetuating this sense that women are victims?
I think, unfortunately, in the society, we are completely guilty of normalising street harassment and women being treated fundamentally differently to men. And 1 in 3 women, when they walk along at night, they hold their keys between their fingers like that. That's another fact. I think that what this offers is just a way to protect women and offer them the reassurance that we are going to do something about the culture.
I hear what you're saying. I get that point, Amy. But I would put to you, actually, that walking around the streets of Sadiq Khan's London, I'm a bloke and I don't feel especially safe.
I think that's a completely separate issue, really.
Well, how?
Because we're talking about recording misogyny and making a record so that we can see patterns emerging of people that are potentially dangerous to women. We're not talking about somebody shouting. And also, I saw the other day somebody saying they were wolf whistles and they found that complimentary. I think that's a real problem, that we have that in our society, and that is now seen as something that can be not only accepted but weirdly just taken not seriously.
Amy, come on. Everyone knows that when a man expresses interest in a woman, in some cases it can be creepy and not wanted, but in most cases it's when you don't actually fancy the person that's doing it. I think you just have to be honest about that.
I think there's a big difference between shouting, "Oh, I think you look lovely," and something that I couldn't even say on this programme because it is so explicit. And that is normally the reality of the street harassment we're discussing today.
So, Mike, would you like it if you...
Darren,
I'm just going to ask you a question, Mike, and then you can come back to that. But would you like it if you were walking down the street, Mike, and someone said, "Oh, I don't know, you've got a nice bottom," or something like that? I imagine you'd feel somewhat objectified, wouldn't you?
I'd be utterly thrilled, to be quite frank. It would make my year. It hasn't happened yet, Darren, but one can but hope. And I just wanted to say, to say that wolf whistling or catcalling are evidence of misogyny, well, to normal people, which obviously excludes feminists, that is just absolutely ridiculous. They're expressions of appreciation for women, and normal women appreciate it. And plenty of women have told me that as they got older, they didn't get wolf whistled, and they're kind of pissed off about it.
Oh, I apologise for that language there by Mike.
Sorry,
but Amy, you had some point to raise there.
I just think it's absolutely startling and astounding that you've got a guest who is endorsing wolf whistlers. So you would be happy for your daughters to walk along the street and have random men shout from the other side of the road about their body parts? Is that what you want?
It's not what I want, but at the end of the day, you're seeking a world that can never exist, and women will always. I would rather that women build some resilience rather than be special snowflakes who melt.
Right.
Who melts just as a man shouts something in the street.
Right? So men are exempt from this, but we as women must accept things that you don't experience or have to deal with anyway. We have to be accepted.
Amy, men get shouted at. I can tell you, any Scotsman who wears a kilt into a pub or a bar will have stories about about drunk women taking photographs up their kilt. But you've never heard about men whining on about up-kilting, have you?
Dominique?
I can't believe this is reduced to this. We're essentially living in a country that's decriminalised rape. I think only 3% of rapes are.
Dominique, I want Dominique to come in on that. That's quite a serious charge.
Yeah, no, I think that's probably a bit dramatic. We haven't effectively decriminalised rape. I think the problem is that the police aren't actually solving crimes, and that's the problem. I think a really big distinction needs to be made. Of course, I've been catcalled, I've been whistled at. It's not nice. It's annoying. I don't like it when men do it, but I'm focusing on how realistic is it to make the act in itself illegal, and what are the knock-on effects of that. The police, as they aren't focusing on actual crimes that are affecting women and men across this country, adding more to the list to pander to a group of people that probably won't even vote Conservative in a general election anyway, I think is extremely counterproductive.
Amy, with a lot of these things, like on the gender pay gap, for example, which doesn't compare like-for-like roles, for example, a lot of this stuff just seems to be myth. Would you accept that?
No, I wouldn't accept that at all. And I think it's interesting what Dominique says, because the whole point of what Liz Truss is putting forward is to make it easier to get to the bottom of the more serious crimes. And I think the way this has been trivialised is really sad, actually, because one of the great things she put forward was a domestic violence register. So everybody who commits domestic violence gets recorded, and then their future partners are made aware of it.
I agree with that.
I think really, if you look at everything in full, the headline has taken the whole thing out of context. And actually, all Liz Truss is saying is we need to record and note things that could lead to more serious offences. And that is going to lead to what Dominique is saying we should be dealing with. It will make it easier and simpler to take these steps early on to prevent the more serious crimes.
OK, we're going to have to leave it there, folks.
In a pilot scheme that's been going since 2016. It's tried and tested.
OK.
This isn't a new idea.
We'll leave it there. Thank you very much to each of you for your time. My thanks, of course, to the leader of the Children and Family Party, Mike Buchanan, and author and broadcaster Amy Nicole and Dominique Samuels in the studio with me. Plenty more to come this afternoon on Real Britain. Next, we're going